and I seem to find the happy.
And I said you can forget everything, but you never forget your name.
The movie opens at the tail end of 1939, above the vast dunes of the Sahara Desert. A biplane flies over this expanse. In the front cockpit sits a woman, her head resting back, seemingly asleep or unconscious. Below them, the solitude is broken by a military outpost nestled in the dunes. Soldiers spot the aircraft and shout orders, opening fire towards the plane. The pilot is thrown from the wreckage and survives, but his body is engulfed in flames, leaving him horrifically burned. They treat him with traditional remedies, transporting him on a makeshift cot attached to a camel. In their camp, a local healer tends to him using herbal salve and gently applying it to the pilot's burnt face. The man is drifting in and out of consciousness, unable to speak as he is again transported on camelback. The next scene is set in October 1944, in war-torn Italy. Many soldiers and nurses are walking around a field hospital within a ruined seaside resort where the British Army is processing the wounded. The pilot has been a permanent patient, burns healed but leaving irreparable scars. An intelligence officer interrogates him about his identity, fearing that he may be a German. His scar renders him unrecognizable and he is incredibly weak, relying on regular doses of morphine to manage his pain. He is being cared for by a young Canadian nurse named Hana. During the questioning, the patient claims to have no memory of his name, his rank, or the events leading up to his crash. He is simply known as the English patient due to his accent. However, he admits to a detail that raises suspicion. Struggling to breathe, the patient asks the officer to be left alone to rest. As the Allied forces push the German army north, the medical unit packs up to follow the front lines. Hana apologizes to the patient because they had to move him yet again despite his discomfort. Then, she hears someone shouting her name. Jenny sits on a jeep driving up alongside the large medical truck Hana is riding in. Laughing and full of life, Jenny asks Hana for some money to buy some lace in the next village. Hana tosses her some money. Jenny's jeep speeds up to take the lead, but moments later, it triggers a hidden landmine. The vehicle is obliterated in a violent explosion. Hana runs out of the truck towards the wrecked jeep, crying for her best friend's death. The convoy halts. Soldiers with metal detectors sweep the road ahead for more landmines. Hana, in a state of shock and dissociation, walks past the men, ignoring their frantic screams for her to stop. Her eyes are fixed on the ground as she keeps walking. She has spotted Jenny's bracelet lying in the dirt. One of the soldiers carefully retrieves it and hands it to her. Nearby, a Sikh lieutenant named Kip is shown defusing another mine found in the road. Overwhelmed by grief and unwilling to continue moving with the army, Hana makes a decision. She tells her commanding officer that she cannot go on. She intends to take the English patient, who is too frail for the rough transport, into a ruined castle they passed nearby.
It's not safe here. The whole country's crawling with bandits.
When he dies, I'll catch up.
She plans to stay there and tend to him until he dies, because they all know it's just a matter of time before he does. Her officer argues, but eventually relents, recognizing her mental fragility. He leaves her with supplies and orders her to rejoin the unit in Livorno once the patient has passed away. With the help of a couple soldiers, Hana and the patient settle into the ruined Villa San Girolamo. It is a shell of a building, with gaping holes in the roof and walls destroyed by artillery, but it offers quiet and stability. She sets up a room for the patient, creating a routine of bathing him, reading to him, and administering his morphine. It's just the two of them in the practically barren villa. Their solitude is soon interrupted by the arrival of a stranger. A man who claims that his name is David Caravaggio appears at the villa. His hands are bandaged, and by dropping an egg he brought as a gift, it's revealed that he is missing both of his thumbs. He claims to be with the Canadian Intelligence Corps, but his interest seems focused on the villa and its occupants. While Hana prepares the egg he brought, David secretly steals vials of morphine from Hana's supply to feed his addiction. David is suspicious of the burned man's identity, seeming to know more about the patient than he lets on.
And I said you can forget everything, but you never forget your name.
Shortly after, Hana finds a semi-broken piano in the villa. When she starts playing a song, Kip, the Sikh combat engineer from the road, rushes into the room and fires a pistol shot into the ceiling to startle her into stopping. He explains that the Germans frequently rigged musical instruments with explosives to kill civilians. He carefully inspects the piano and, sure enough, extracts a deadly bomb from its casing. It turns out that Kip and his partner, a junior officer named Hardy, as well as other soldiers, have been assigned to sweep the area for mines and booby traps left by the retreating Germans. Kip and his unit set up tents in the villa's garden as their lodgings. Meanwhile, within the quiet of his room, the patient's memory begins to return. It's triggered by his book, a copy of Histories by Herodotus filled with personal notes. His resurfacing memories take us back into the late 1930s, before the war. The patient is revealed to be Count Laszlo de Almásy, a Hungarian cartographer and explorer. He is a man of few words, focused entirely on his work mapping the deserts of North Africa. He is part of the Royal Geographical Society's expedition, working closely with his good friend Madox, an Englishman who is more sociable than him. The expedition's dynamic shifts with the arrival of Geoffrey and Katharine Clifton, a wealthy, charismatic British couple who have flown in to join the mapping efforts. They bring with them a new plane and substantial funding. Almásy is initially dismissive of them, particularly Katharine, viewing her presence as a distraction in the harsh desert environment. However, beneath his cold exterior, Katharine's wit and charm begins to grow an attraction from Almásy. In a flashback to a bazaar in Cairo, Katharine is exploring and has purchased a woven rug. Almásy sees her and decides to approach. He criticizes her for not bargaining, explaining that paying the full asking price is an insult to the local merchants. Katharine is annoyed by his arrogance but intrigued by his intensity. Later, Geoffrey flies off on business, leaving Katharine at the desert to accompany the mapping team. The group travels to a remote region where Almásy has discovered a geographical formation with an interesting shape. Nearby, they find the Cave of Swimmers, a prehistoric site containing ancient hieroglyphs showing ancient humans swimming, depicting a time when the desert was green and wet. While the men work to uncover more of the site, Katharine paints a rendition of the cave art. She offers to paste one into Almásy's scrapbook-like copy of Herodotus. He refuses politely but firmly, and Katharine takes the rejection personally, sensing the walls he puts up to keep people out. While driving back from the cave, disaster strikes. A truck hits a soft ridge of sand and rolls over. While there are no major injuries, the car is wrecked. Madox takes the injured and the other functioning car to get help and supplies, leaving Almásy, Katharine, and a few uninjured men behind to wait. That night, a massive sandstorm engulfs them. Forced to shelter together in the car, the physical proximity eases their tension. Almásy speaks of the different winds of the desert, his voice betraying his feelings. He reaches out and touches her hair. She does not pull away. They fall asleep together, waking only when the storm clears. They hurry to save their trapped friends and use a flare gun to alert Madox of their location. Now safe in Cairo, the tension now becomes a full-blown affair. Katharine visits Almásy's hotel room, where they finally make love. Their connection is intense, and the affair goes on for quite some time. They meet in borrowed rooms and hidden corners. In a moment of intimacy, they discuss the things they love and hate. But the shadow of her marriage looms over them. Almásy, struggling with the guilt and the impossibility of the situation, tells her she should return to Geoffrey. Katharine is hurt and angry, leaving abruptly, but they cannot stay apart. At a Christmas party for the Royal Geographical Society in 1938, the cracks began to show. Almásy arrives late, visibly drunk. He interrupts the polite society gathering with a rambling speech, embarrassing himself. Katharine watches him with a mix of pity and longing. Later, they dance, and the intensity of their connection is obvious to anyone paying close attention. Her husband Geoffrey, who has been sensing a distance in his wife, watches them closely with suspicion. His suspicions are seemingly confirmed when on the couple's anniversary, Geoffrey watches from the cab as his wife heads out of their hotel, only to come back the next day.
And I seem to find the happy...
Back in 1944 at the villa, David confronts Hana. He tells her about the patient's identity, a man he views as a traitor responsible for the torture he endured, including his missing thumbs.
What if I told you he did this to me?
He was actually an intelligence operative in North Africa during the war. He explains that the Germans were able to sweep across the desert and capture the city of Tobruk because they possessed detailed maps that could only have come from Almásy.
I don't have a boyfriend.
David was picked out of a crowd by the Germans based on photography. He was interrogated by a German officer named Muller, who demanded the names of his fellow spies. When David refused to talk, Muller ordered a nurse to cut off his thumbs.
Come over here.
When he was freed, David hunted down and killed the nurse and Muller, but he is still searching for the man who provided the maps that allowed the Germans to be there in the first place. He believes Almásy gave the maps to the enemy, directly leading to the fall of the city and his own mutilation. Meanwhile, a romance begins to blossom between Hana and Kip. One evening, he takes her on a motorcycle ride to a church in a nearby town. Kip rigs a harness and rope system, hoisting Hana up into the air with a flare so she can swing through the darkness and view the painted figures on the fresco face to face. It is a moment of beauty amidst the wreckage of war, and they fall in love. They spend the night together in the villa's barn, finding a temporary sanctuary in each other. The reality of war crashes back in the following morning. Hardy comes to the villa to find Kip, reporting that they have discovered a complex bomb wired to a bridge nearby. Hana is terrified, convinced that her curse will now claim Kip. She waits anxiously as Kip works to defuse the device while a massive Allied tank convoy is driving towards them with no clue of what's happening.
Can't see, sir! Hardy, what's happening?
Slow down!
Push out that bed! You've got to cut it.
He eventually succeeds, collapsing in relief as the tanks stop by to bring good news. It seems the good news is that the war in Europe is ending. The villa erupts in celebration. In the nearby village, a street party breaks out. Rain falls, but no one cares. Hardy, drunk on victory and wine, climbs a bronze statue in the town square to hang a flag. As Hana, Kip, and David dance in the patient's room back at the villa, a sudden explosion tears through the night from the direction of the town. Kip rushes to the square to find that the statue was booby-trapped with a bomb. Hardy is dead, and the joy of victory is instantly extinguished. Devastated, Kip retreats to the barn, refusing to speak. Inside the villa, the final pieces of the puzzle fall into place as Almásy, nearing his death, confesses the truth to David.
I had to get back to the desert. I'd made a promise.
It wasn't just another expedition. You did this.
He explains what happened in the desert in 1939. He was packing up the base camp at the Cave of Swimmers as the war intensified, waiting for Geoffrey to pick him up in the plane. Geoffrey arrived, but he didn't land. He dove the plane straight at Almásy in a murder-suicide attempt, having realized the truth about the affair. Almásy dove out of the way just in time as the plane crashed violently. Almásy ran to the wreckage. Geoffrey had died, but in the front seat, Katharine was alive. She was badly injured, with broken ribs, wrist, and a crushed ankle. In her pain, she told Almásy that Geoffrey knew everything and that he was trying to kill them all. She confessed that she had always loved Almásy. Weeping, he carried her into the Cave of Swimmers to shelter her from the sun. He wrapped her in a cloth and built a small fire. He had to leave her there to get help from the city. He left her the flashlight, a supply of food and water, and his copy of Herodotus.
I don't want to die in the desert. And I know exactly where I want to be buried. In our garden where I grew up. Promise me you'll come back for me.
I promise I'll come back for you.
She began to write in the book as he left. Almásy walked for 3 days across the unforgiving sands to save his lover. He finally reached a British-held town. He stumbled up to the soldiers, frantic, screaming that a woman was injured at the Cave of Swimmers and demanding to borrow a jeep and medical supplies. But he had no identification, and his name sounded foreign. The British, on high alert for spies, didn't believe him. When he starts lashing out, desperate to save Katharine, they knock him unconscious and arrest him. He woke up on a train transporting prisoners to the coast. He knew that every hour he sat there, Katharine was dying. He managed to escape by killing a guard and jumping from the moving train. Desperate and with no other options, he walked into the desert to find the German army. He traded his precious maps to the Germans in exchange for gasoline and the recovery of the Madox's plane, which he had left before his return to England. Almásy flew the plane back to the cave, but he was too late. Katharine was dead, alone in the dark after running out of rations and heat. He found her final entry in his book, a letter declaring her love for him and her acceptance of death. Grief-stricken, he carried her body out of the cave and loaded her into the plane. He took off, intending to fly her body back to civilization, but as they flew over the German lines, the soldiers opened fire, leading to the crash that started the movie. David listens to this confession, and so does Hana, who can hear everything from the floor above. He realizes that Almásy is not a malicious traitor who sided with the Nazis for ideology, but a man driven mad by grief and love. Seeing the broken, dying man before him, David decides not to kill him. Besides, he had grown somewhat fond of Almásy after spending time with him in the villa. The next morning, Kip finally emerges from the barn, now a changed man. He tells Hana that he must leave Europe, a continent he sees as addicted to war and destruction. He promises he will find her again one day, but for now, he has to go. He then rides away on his motorcycle, leaving Hana heartbroken once again. Later, Hana enters the room to do the regular morphine injection for Almásy. However, he knows it is time to go. He pushes the many vials of morphine by his bedside toward her. He is asking for release from his pain. Hana understands his wish, and with tears streaming down her face, she prepares a lethal dose. She sits by his side as she injects the morphine into his arm. She reads Catherine's final letter from the Herodotus book aloud to him as he drifts away into a peaceful death.
I know you'll come and carry me out into the Palace of Winds. That's all I've wanted.